Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Fola Alabi.
Hello and welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you go further, faster in business and beyond. We are coming at you live from the SBL studio in Calgary, Alberta. I am your host, Fola Alabi of FolaAlabi.com, your award-winning business strategist, a global peak performance and project management consultant. I specialize in helping organizations, driven professionals, and entrepreneurs achieve their goals and accelerate their businesses to increase their income, their impact, and amplify success by creating the life they actually crave. And what do? I use my superpowers in strategic project management. Today is super exciting for me because we're going to be talking about one of the key topics that comes up over and over and over again. We're talking about how can we avoid failing projects. It's interesting because there's so many studies that have actually come up over the years that talks about over 70% of projects actually fail. That is like almost ridiculous. That's right. How can we ensure that your project is not part of that statistics? But in the comments, I want to know where you're actually joining me from. So let me know where you're joining me from so that I can actually give you a shout out. But without any further ado, I want to introduce not just a leader, I'm talking about a global leader. He's one of the 60 PMI fellows. Yes, we're talking about the Global Future of Work Executive. He's a leader in Siemens. He's a former executive director. He's worked for Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation. He's like implemented so much change. And apart from that, he's a leader in both action and in deeds. Always open, hands open wide to support, help, enable professionals to achieve their goals. I'm talking about no other person than Dr. L. Zeitoun. Doctor, how are you doing today?
I am so excited, Fola. We finally made it happen. I can't believe it. We've talked about this for a long time. Excited to be with you and with your audience. It's a great moment. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. When we talk about change and things moving, up and down, definitely life does happen. But we want to just say thank you for accepting the invitation to be here today. But I want us to dive right in. There's so much to unpack. Projects are failing every day, doctor. We've got a lot of young professionals here who are aspiring project managers. A lot of them are already experienced PMs. However, at times they're handed over like projects that are going off the rails.
Yeah.
Doctor, where do they start?
Well, first of all, let's break this myth that the goal is to make sure no failure is going to happen. If that's your goal, please tune out right now. Get off the line because that's not what this is going to be all about. Number one, why is that? We'll find out here shortly. The reality is your statistic is right. Gartner confirms that 70%, of course, when you talk about transformation programs and projects, what is so critical is how much I stay in that quote unquote failing zone and what do I do with it? Don't approach a project. This has been my life's almost recipe. Success could be one of our worst enemies. I am much better off if I'm pursuing success, but by the same token, I want to get those opportunities where that initial failure is going to change my life. I'll start with an example immediately. Manufacturing, dial things back all the way to my days in the manufacturing environment, my first PMO opportunity to lead a PMO. If I did not experience the disjointed aspects of what could happen in a project that would lead to a challenge in getting your project on the right track, I would have immediately learned absolutely nothing from that experience. And typically what happened there is I did not get my stakeholders aligned. We all know, everyone in your audience knows the importance of stakeholders and aligning those stakeholders. Fresh out of school, although I had my PhD at the time, I still had these ideal eyes and not realizing that, yes, it's clear that we want to set some processes in place, we get the organization aligned, we want to have the right metrics and da-da-da. However, my boss, who was fantastic at the time, an executive that joined us from one of the global organizations, did not get the fact it's about building alliances. So immediately, the first thing I would say as an immediate first takeaway, look at failure as an opportunity to learn tremendously, especially learn what it takes to truly align, work with people, and make sure they see what you see in terms of what success looks like. Our dilemma is when we don't nail down what success looks like.
Oh my goodness. You know, when we talk about this, I had a workshop just a couple of days ago and I was talking about initiating a project. And a piece that a lot of people don't actually highlight is the success criteria. And I was telling these young professionals to say, yes, I know you want to kick off your projects, you want to start building things. She's like, but what exactly does success look like?
Absolutely.
Have you agreed your success criteria with your sponsor and your stakeholders? Have you identified them? Because how are you even going to tell that, yes, I did exactly what I was meant to do? And then even tying that back into strategic objectives, I know we're going to get there pretty quick because
Yeah.
you could deliver a project on time,
Yeah.
within budget to their great quality. But if there is lack of strategic alignment, that is a failure overall.
Fola, it goes deeper. And I'm so glad you started with those kinds of points because that's very important. I would say immediately, if you're listening and paying attention to the flow here, the immediate first thing that I would say in this time and era, 2022, going forward into the next generation, basically, or decade, first thing you want to throw out in the garbage is the view of definition still in a project that it's about time, cost, scope, or any of those
Constraints, exactly.
And we've changed that already. The good news is that organizations have been maturing along the path, including the PMIs of the world, the Project Management Institute. We all maybe seen or hopefully see the talent triangle, to your point, and has shifted towards more some other views of what success looks like. And we can talk more about those later. But the reality is what's most important is what is the value in what you're doing. So you're assigned a PM, you're new in the role, or you have been a veteran in the role. All of us can go through the same dilemma, which is please stop, take a time out. I call it the pause effect, right? If you are unable to apply pause and step back and say, what is truly the value expected from this? Don't talk. I mean, project managers going into the future, it is a no-go anymore that we are more about the traditional tactical aspects we get out of projects. It's got to be about the outcomes, the value. PMI has called that for years the benefits realization, as some of us may have paid attention to some of those helpful additional points to the standards. But bottom line, you're working on a project. Are you talking to the right customer? I'm not just talking to your boss. Are you able through your boss or your leader to make sure that you understand again what's behind the scene? I can tell you a number of times in my life, it is the guy on a shop floor somewhere, or the guy on a construction site somewhere, or the one who has the closest ears to the ultimate user, the ultimate customer, who actually knows what is truly needed. And if you're not getting that, the number one muscle I want to talk about today is develop a sensing muscle like no other going into the future. Things have changed. We have data, we have digitization effects, or tools that can give us the right themes and the right focus, etc. If we don't use those to dig deep and find out exactly what matters, your number 1, 2 words that matter for you as a project manager, and to me as well, is so what? If I do X, what is the so what associated with that? Am I going to change X? I'm going to change Y, right? I'm not doing this just because I want to build this facility or roll out this product or provide this customer with a roadmap. It is to serve a very clear need. And all of us make that mistake, including myself. And that's the beauty of failure. If you fail once in that, we got to turn that around and be very successful. And it's really not rocket science. It is truly not your engineering degree or my PG like I do, etc. It's about almost common sense on steroids. And in terms of being tough, going down deep to asking the right questions and making sure you're talking to the right people. If you're not talking to the right people, might as well forget it.
That's absolutely right. I was doing like an entrepreneurial piece and I say, great project managers who are strategic project leaders are great entrepreneurs. Because what do entrepreneurs do? It's all about value. It's all about how can I solve a problem? They're always checking and ensuring that for their clients, for their customers, right? They're like, what's the problem? What are we fixing? And how exactly is this going to become a solution? So as a project manager, even when you're handed a project, how can you ensure that the overall objective and the goal of the organization totally aligns? Because I want to believe that businesses are out there to either probably make money, solve a problem, or at least create some form of value. Yeah. But when a PM is handed over, for instance, a young just guy out of school and says, yes, I've just started my career now. You're like, I was just someone to my leader's office, and he just handed me that project to say, yes, you have to fix that as an IT transformation, for instance. I want you to lead that, and it's like, yes, guess what? It goes live in 6 months. The project has been signed, and where did they start?
This is the beauty of it and the difficulty of it. So almost probably everyone in your audience have heard by now the words VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. But
Yes.
the last couple of years, we added two Ds in the front and the back. So now it's DVOCAD, this whole idea of disruption and the whole idea of the diversity on the other side. So where do you start? Number one, you got to realize that if you are in projects, you're about creating change. And you're also trying to be ahead of what's needed from a change standpoint. So that's where the disruption is. You are changing, no matter what the project is, by the way. I'm not talking just a massive IT transformation or going into the SaaS space or going into whatever it is that's driving your agenda. It is the true nature of projects. So what does that do to you? Well, first of all, if you are not going to be ready to be the CEO, remember that's one of the themes we want to get across, the reality of the importance of how to become a true CEO. If you get into projects and don't think you are the CEO, think twice, because my life's dream. So you mentioned in the beginning, the investment in project management and PMI and being a fellow, etc. I'm doing this for one reason only. I want all underline executive leaders of the future to recognize this capability and to also be the candidates of being the CEOs of the future. But I want everyone listening, to be a CEO now already in your practice. Back to your point about the view of the business, back to your point about what matters the most, back to the point about getting ourselves ready with the kind of skills that are truly needed for success. Daniel Goleman, when he talked to us years back and generations back about EQ, why did he bring that to the mix? And why did Brene Brown later, or Simon Sinek and others in the world, dig down into that? They dug down into that because the best executives of the future, and I know many of us are just starting, but I want us to already put ourselves on that seat of being an executive, are the ones who realize, I want to work on my technical aspects. I want to understand my requirements. I want to be ahead there. And you've seen over the years the T-shaped skills and all of that. And that's what I want us to do. Focus on this component of it. The best PMs. I still remember when I was being taught by my mentor, Dr. Harold Kirzner, and he said, Al, your number one mistake is to be in a position where you're hiring people with a deep expertise and nothing else. And sure enough, every time either I went to that space or hired someone with just deep expertise in one area, that was failure written across every aspect of it. Advice, please invest yesterday in the ability of looking at your leadership very differently. Trust that you're a leader now. You're not, literally, to succeed in projects, you're not working for a boss, you're working for a mission. There are very totally different things. If you don't see the impact, step back. If you don't see what I need to develop from a skill standpoint to be able to see holistically end to end what the impact is out of my project, I need to get help, mentoring. Find someone like I did early on, find someone now, do a peer review, do whatever kind of mechanism that can help you really see right in the mirror, what does it take for me to operate differently? But it requires very distinct stops and milestones that I personally put on myself.
That's so great. When I look at the strategic project leader pillars, the S right there is strategic mindset. I cannot overemphasize on how that skill set is totally invaluable, not even for project managers, even for business leaders.
Yeah.
Because the ability to see the bigger picture, the ability to actually focus on the actual mission, the value, the customer needs, the way where the world is going, sustainability. We talk about the vocal world where things are rapidly changing. You being ahead of the curve is what will actually set you apart. But when we dive deeper into that particular piece where there is a PM who's been given a project, right? And they probably know that maybe this project doesn't really align to the value of the organization.
Yeah.
How can a young professional kind of like push back and say, like, how can you challenge senior leadership, for instance, and say, I really don't think this is kind of what we should be looking at, So what will be like, the strategies to actually look up to that leader and say, this doesn't really seem like a great one.
That's
what advice can you give?
Multi-billion-dollar question, and it's really one of the toughest questions of all. I mentioned my passion. I mentioned my journey with PMI. PMI used to have a mission under the title Worldwide Organizations Will Embrace, Value, Utilize Project Management, and Attribute their success to it. So what do I do at my level as a PM to really make things happen? And first of all, develop your muscle for asking tough questions. Find ways where you find your allies in your organization and your team. Build the foundation of the basics of trust and true solid communication so that people know that you're sincere, you're willing to collaborate, you're a team player, but you're going to use the group of alliances that you have to help you provide the credibility that you need in order for you to have those tough dialogues with the executives. And the reality is, especially the younger you are and the more able you to experiment, because remember, there's the positive side of failure is the experimentation. The more you need to develop your toughness and your gut in terms of raising the right topics. I call it the risks, of course. We talk about warning signs and the risks, and that's what has always attracted me about project management. It is about the predicting of what could happen. It's not about the past. The past is nice, and I learned, check the box, right? But it's your ability to be truly proactive, especially in this day and age. Having passed, pandemics and world wars and all those things we deal with over time, you got to develop the ability to say, I'm going to find the holistic view. I call it get on the balcony. Develop the skill of getting on the balcony. Young, mature, senior, junior, develop the ability to get on the balcony, not be on the dance floor all the time. I don't want to be hired I don't want us to be hired as people who are just doing busy work, but able to look holistically. And really, when it comes to the executives, be very frank about the impact on the business. And you're smart. Every one of us has the smarts and the abilities to figure out what's the impact on the business if we do not find out where those gaps are, the kinds of warning signs that indicate the executives are not listening, the executives are not seeing, they're not paying attention. I call it the classic John Maxwell phenomenon. I mean, John is a great guy I learn from all the time when it comes to his leadership qualities and so forth. But it's back to his classic books way back when he wrote about thinking again for a change. I would love our audience, every single one of us, to really what he talks about also, mark your calendar. So simply, if I just take away this one thing from our discussion today, in my role as a PM, as a leader, as a team player, mark your calendar. Look exactly at those impacts you want to create. Look exactly at where you're dedicating time to think. And when you think, put time to think about strategically. How can I be asking the questions that link me to the strategic objectives truly of the organization? And if they're off, what can I contribute, no matter what my level is in the organization? You heard it from so many folks who talk about impact. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Till today, no matter how mature in my practice in project management, I still make that mistake. I want us to remember that. Do not ask for permission. Just go for it, because the sense of urgency is so critical for the project managers of tomorrow.
No, 100%. We're talking about building the future leaders. I look and when I think about this book, we're going to get there pretty soon, right? In your book, we spoke about, the next generation. That's where we're building, right? It's a world where project management it's beyond a career now. It's a lifestyle. And that's what I talk about. You need it at home, at work, in business, in everything that we do. And being able to be that actual leader that will be sought after consistently, right? Because they know that, yes, you're going to get results. You're going to build those relationships. You're going to, pull people together. That's absolutely critical. What skill sets? I know we spoke about the strategic mindset. What else can we be doing? Because I know we want to come back to failing projects. So we know a project fails when they obviously do not deliver value.
Yeah.
And when we see this coming, because they're the one inside that sign's already there. I remember when I think about NASA's Rule 15 or something that says, the signs of failure and the seeds actually already sown at the start of the project.
Yeah.
How can we ensure that we are starting our projects right? So what are the key things for you as a leader in projects? You've done this for decades.
Yeah.
When you're kicking off your projects, what are the things that you always make sure are actually present? What are the things that you look for?
A great point. And you spoke just about decades. That's exactly what you want to work quickly to tackle and realize. Success yesterday may be very different than success tomorrow. So the
Yes.
number one skill is resilience, number one, right? So we can really handle the mechanics and dynamics that you're dealing with. But related to that is the high degree of adaptability. How can I develop that? It is truly by being able to push myself almost to the limit. I call project management as operating in a lab, like a laboratory. Think about your project as a laboratory where you're experimenting a lot, but you're doing that intentionally. Project management success is about intentionality. And the way to do that, to develop those skills, you said mindset. So you get your tool set right, get your mindset right, and get the mindset of your key stakeholders right. But you also got to look at the tool set, and that's where the skills go to action, which means an ounce of technical, figure out the technical aspects that would make the most sense to get you to be successful, whether it's the software you're using to keep track of the aspects of progress, etc., whether it's the level of detail in applying project management skills, and you can check the standards and PMIs, PMBOK, etc., and those kinds of things to help you, but really focus much more on the, for a lack of a better word, still the power skills that PMI has also coined maybe that term, or others have, right? And figure out what of those power skills are going to give me that true power. Is it going to be my ability to influence others? And how do I develop that? If I look back at examples, like you mentioned, the nuclear industry, that's where it was. This is an industry that's very sophisticated, has standards and regulators and everything else. The success there for the transformation was highly about, can I get the executives to operate differently? Like literally getting, in that case, a board to work with technology, look at trends, shift to the mindset around, again, risk matters more than anything else. So I cannot have one coin answer for our audience, but I would challenge our audience to, back to the point from just the last comment about the thinking, look at your situation. In the book, as you mentioned, situational and or social leadership is the most critical trend in the future. Many of your audience heard about servant leaders and others. Well, naturally, if you're a junior, might as well just operate as such. Find a way to offer help. If you think about my journey and colleagues like me who really have been enjoying this journey and want to continue to do that, volunteer. You do not volunteer even outside the work environment. So you can find exactly where can I create that impact, where I can cross learn, and so forth. Examples are plenty and many. In the book, you see an example from Ambev. This is a massive organization in Brazil in the beverage industry. How did they do the adaptability I mentioned to you earlier? They found themselves in a pandemic, immediately created what's called the squad of good and so forth. 6 people entrusted by the organization to change the business model and to work on something different that's meaningful to the country. We don't all have to be in that position to adapt and change, but you got to find yourself a way to experiment. Back to the lab idea. I would love for every one of us to look at our projects as a laboratory, a chance for us to experiment with the mix of the skills that I can learn today that create that value. Why? And also the mix of players and team members I can trust. Back to the alliance building we talked about a couple of points back. Find exactly the ingredients that most fit. This is the challenge. It's not a recipe of exactness, but the message is one and only when it comes to correlation to success. Ask the tough questions about, does it matter? What difference does it create? It's not just a job. If you're into project management as a job or just a career path, think again, because that's not how we can actually create the impact we want to have.
Yeah. And, you just hit like so many areas, right? We spoke about, the bigger picture,
Yeah.
Ensuring that, project management is just beyond, not just a, tick box. It has to be a lab, right? Where you are constantly experimenting, you're looking at the business, you're looking at market indicators, you're looking at all of those things and coming back to bring value, even outside of your organization where you can volunteer. However, right, when you see the warning signs, I know it's a skill that every leader even has to embrace, where you know that things are going wrong now. The risks are there where, probably suppliers are not going to be able to meet up, regulatory requirements are changing. And you need to have this conversation with leadership where we feel that maybe this project probably needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
How do you go about it? Because you've been in like this, C-suite. I have been privileged as well to, speak with senior leadership and, put the facts there. And what has always worked for me is when I bring the numbers, right? The impact. They want to know this how it's going to impact us based on numbers and all of that. But what other strategies can we show up with and say, yes? Because for me, number one is no surprises. I do not want, my CFO or, the CEO to find out that there's something that's absolutely going to go wrong. I bring the numbers forward, but what strategies have you leveraged over the years that has helped you, get off bad sports?
Yeah, so early on, I mentioned Kersner earlier as one of my key mentors. Early on, when in consulting years, I used to bring him into the organization, and because he was very good at that. So what he would do is lock the executives in the room and say, "You're not going to go home today unless we align. I'm not going to ask our audience to lock their execs in rooms." But believe me, that worked. And we're talking about massive automotive giants and all those players, right? And he did that very well, and I'm sure he continues to do that. My secret has always been to really help the executives imagine the possible, right? To really find ways by which we need to become a lot better at visualizing the future state of the business and communicating that no matter what our level is in the organization upward. It is insane the pace by which we operate. It's insane the expectations and the demands of the market on the executives. Yeah, you got to find ways to get across to the executive from finding those opportune moments. And the best thing that's worked for me over the years, even like when we took the business internationally, when I used to work in Booz Allen Hamilton, and a group of, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us went to Abu Dhabi to restart the international business. We got a bucket of money and said, "Go grow the business." What does that mean? Right? So that's the kind of dialogue you got to go back. So immediately realize that's not going to work. Mainly had to push back and talk to the leadership. But what? By visualizing. Here's really based on the region, based on what's potential there. Here's really the picture, not just numbers. Here's the impact on the brand. Here's the impact on getting your reputation back or your edge against the competitive landscape, etc. Find ways by which you translate what matters to the executives in as articulated of a picture, roadmap, a set of numbers. You mentioned books earlier, and I still like, the fact that we're in a data space. Also, I love, things like Sense and Respond, for example. Those kind of examples that help us realize we are so fortunate in this year and the next generation that we also have the access to massive research and data points that also you got to realize. I love, for example, still, I'm sure you use techniques like the 6-color thinking hats and so forth. Find out who your executive is, what matters. Maybe she has a red hat, for example, and he can get through in the impact of the mission, or he is, only analytics kind of white hat, or whatever the case might be. You got to almost always, I used to laugh when the first project manager got the PMI award. I think she was a psychiatrist or something like that. I said, like, how did that even happen? But I understand fully now. I mean, I joke a lot about needing my psychiatrist once in a while from what I experienced with the executives, but there are ways. And if you cannot do it, if you cannot have Kersner block in the room, you cannot do the same yourself, if you cannot really visualize and communicate that, you got to find your advocates, building advocates up and down and left and right in the organization. I say that as a learning to myself. I keep missing that learning time and again. There is nothing more valuable for us to do than exactly that, to ensure we're going to get across to these guys.
So pretty much the thread that actually ties all of this is a lot of relationship management and stakeholder management. Last week, we dived actually deep into stakeholder management because the relationships we build will determine what success actually looks like. Because there are times where, you want to communicate, you want to share information, but that PM may not even know how to do it because you're just communicating the wrong way. As you said, the different color hats of that leader, where people might want to see numbers, people want to see, value, whatever that thing actually means to them. And so how exactly have you been able to build relationships? How have you been able to come in a room where, you're absolutely different and you're like, where do I start? I'm new, but I know that I've got a heart to learn. I want to make an impact. But for people who are just starting off, probably especially who actually migrate and move to a different country, especially now, I'm on a project. How do I build those relationships?
Yeah, listening, I guess, is the magic answer. I love Simon, by the way. Simon Sinek, people like or don't like Simon, I don't care. But he, even the simple things about, you watch a small video by him, for example, leaders speak last. I know some of us are not in that position he's talking about. He's talking about the more senior leaders. Maybe some of us are not. But the reality is, you got to, not just because you're intimidated not to talk, you got to find out that to build relationships, you got to sense and understand your audience fully first. Don't, many of us, because we're especially in younger parts of our journey, we want to show like we know the stuff and we know our technical aspects and so forth. Yeah, we get that. That's a check in the box. You're not there to do that. You're there to transform how we operate in some way or another. And the only way you can do that is to create a space. Just like we want to create safe spaces to operate in agile fashion or this and that, execs need a safe space. If you want to truly build a relationship with an exec, beyond all the other sensing aspects we talked about, or the fact that maybe have a joint sport or play golf or talk about sports or anything like that, more important, give them space. Execs want to also share. Execs have a lot on their plate in terms of what their true pain points are. So don't be pushed to be in a position where you're gonna really want to be talking or asking too many questions. Just open things up, even for the executives, to be sharing truly what's important to them and latch on that to build the right relationship. Show how can you actually be of value to that exec, not just even from a direct number or business standpoint, from just even dealing with the kind of pressures and other stresses those execs are dealing with. Because in reality, every exec today that's not getting some level of executive coaching or some level of external support, he or she are missing out because they are
Right.
super much into this narrow space. You as a PM, the beauty of your role, you can expand things. We always talked about the forest from the tree. We always talked about the fact that you want to develop that muscle to help the organization, your team, and especially the exec, to see sometimes things they cannot see because they're so close to it.
I know, goodness. That sound means it's something special right now. It's time for us to talk about how we can leverage this as a lifestyle in our personal life. Today, we're talking about filling projects. As you know, we have projects in every aspect of life, in business, in our personal life. Dr. L has made it 100% clear that in order to build what you really want, it's all about value. It's all about ensuring that you are positioning yourself as the value driver, looking at the big picture, having a strategic mindset. You're going to wonder, right? How can we make that even better in our personal life? And I want to ask you a question today. For those who are actually married, or you may just be in a relationship, how are you positioning value in everything you actually do? Are you speaking less, as we said? Are you communicating, but you're ensuring that you're listening to understand what exactly is a bigger picture? Because at the end of the day, what failure actually looks like may be one that could be obviously avoided. And I want to throw this back to our doctor right now. Doctor, how can we, make this a lifestyle? How can we take all of this
Yeah.
and create better lives? I know that is something you're also passionate about, right? Creating that holistic well-being and success. How can we do that?
I tell you, I mean, you mentioned being a fellow, and I'm very proud of it. I have my, medal here about being my fellow. But the reality is, I learned more about project management from family and friends than anything else. And I was in a science experiment kind of exhibition yesterday at school for my young daughter, and she was so proud. And it was very amazing. At some point, she knows I had a very rough week, and I had a big project to work on, and she even though I was running around with her friends and very busy checking out the exhibits, she comes to me and gives me $5, saying, "Dad, there's some very nice things downstairs in the cafeteria. Go get to yourself." So
Something for you too.
it gave me a shock, and it was really building on the fact that earlier I did something nice with her as well. And she, for example, forgot something at school that was very important for her project, and I didn't like scream at her, "How could you forget something like that?" So but project management is a life skill. That's the beauty of it. And I don't want us to like go home and apply project management to everything we do with our kids and families, because some of us maybe take it too extreme. And I'm exposed to many cultures. Part of my DNA also is German in a way, and I'm married to a German and so forth. But the reality is, the mindset that organizes and looks holistically is a beautiful way to live our life. Many of us have heard of the work breakdown structure. If you know anything into the mechanics of project management, and the building blocks and how they connect together to back to achieving maybe deliverables and ultimately, hopefully, the value we talked about earlier. Planning a vacation, planning your X number of important things you want to do with your friends and so forth. There's nothing wrong with that. The important aspect, though, is if we want to come to a world, our topic earlier is about changing execs and changing organizations and changing view of success. Where is it going to start? Well, it's going to start in your family. It's going to start in your schools. It's going to start in how we just manage to step back and be a bit more rather than on the run. Sometimes people ask me, how are things? Oh, like it's a rat race or it's whatever. Yeah, but is that good? Does that give you the personal satisfaction?
Exactly.
Whether it's meditation or anything else that anchors us down. But the reality is, I believe we got to take time, look at the basic principles of PM, and not just the checklist PM. That's nice and everything else. But how can I really organize the pieces to connect a whole?
Exactly. That holistic view of looking at everything, ensuring, because I feel that when you're successful at work and you're not successful at home, that isn't success. We want to help, you create that holistic life where you go home every day. You're excited to be there. You go to work, you're adding value as well, and you're doing that both ways. Oh
Yeah.
my God. It's just like so much to actually unpack. But what exactly would you say are your final words when it comes to overall project management and avoiding what we call failure? What would you say are your top 5 things that our listeners can go away with today and start taking action to actually avoid what we call failure?
So let's start with two very easy ones to remember. One is the 3 Ps. So maybe some things to remember, like in terms of numbers, if the audience likes that. So definitely get back to your passion, right? So the 3 Ps of really applying PM and succeeding in PM and also in your life. So passion, persistence, and patience, right? So the 3 Ps I would say I would highly live by, almost like a daily checklist that says, am I really living my passion? Am I doing that both personally and at work as much as I can? And the persistence that's required, as we talked about, including the discussion we had with the executives, and then the patience associated with that. The second one that I love the most about the beauty of project management is what's called the 3 H's, right? So that's the head, the heart, and then the hand. Please, 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 the order matters, right? Things have got to make sense for you. And that's why we talked about the tough questions and the guts and the developing the muscle for asking and for those tough dialogues and building the alliances and so forth. So please invest in it has to make sense. The value has to be clear. Success has to be defined. And then figure out how can I motivate the heart so I can get the alliances, get the team, get the colleagues, get my family at home, whatever you apply it to. And then the execution is fine. So along the line with that second one, I would say the why, the what, the how. That's very close to the 3 H's, but that also makes a huge difference in project management, in my opinion. You got to make sure that you talk about why first. We are all by nature, whether you're an engineer by training or technical expertise or a programmer, whatever the case might be, we love the how to getting to action. That's nice and good. 9 out of 10 times when my projects fail is because I jumped into the how too fast. You got to ask the question why up front. The pharma example still scars me. Like there was a huge pharmaceutical company in Germany. We submitted everything exactly beautifully on time. They signed off, paid the invoice and everything else. And then they said, hey, if you are in the area, come down and have some lunch with us and we can chat a little bit. It was one of the toughest debriefs I've ever had in my life because they actually hated the team and hated how we worked because of what? We truly did not nail what they wanted to accomplish the most from a purpose standpoint. They wanted us to help really minimize the resistance they had across their stakeholders in getting to that one IT system that they wanted to create, right? So those are the first 3. Then the next 2 immediately to the top of that would be, we talked a lot about alliances and so forth. I would say, please, and I mentioned it briefly as marking your calendar, but being conscientious of where you spend your time. It's so important. Time for from now into forever is going to continue to be our most highly valued commodity. And we got to make sure we look at where that time is being spent, especially in the project space, between the busy work and the strategic work. The biggest thing you will see in that book, you mentioned earlier, is that project management has reached a very much of a strategic capability, and strategic projects is where the future is going to go. The career and the opportunity for PMs is massive, but it's only going to be for the ones of us who are able to really develop this capacity and this muscle of true thinking about what matters and translating that into where you spend your time. And maybe the last but not least is the fun component. Project management is really about making sure we truly work in something that's meaningful to us and with people who we care about and we care for, right? I mean, I love Patrick Lencioni and others who wrote the books on the 5 dysfunctions of teams and how to overcome them, etc. These are great things. And actually, I would say pick that up as well and dive into the details and look how you, because we talked a lot about how can I cross between that trust layer into dealing with conflicts, because ultimately that how you can develop the commitment, both your family side and your project side. Don't look at project success or failure as your failure. It's a collective failure. But part of that collective failure, not just the executives need to be sharp and clear and educated, and you have a role to educate the executives. That's one hopefully very key takeaway. We got to find a way to create a true learning organization and a learning team of the future. We got to do something there. But bottom line, be very conscientious about how can I exactly continue to sharpen and develop that muscle of failing, experimenting, but learning fast, having the sense of urgency, and tying that to what matters to both my family, my project, my team, whatever the case might be as well.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Al. You have just like said so many things, and it's just like music to my ears. I just, yeah. I cannot even say thank you enough. The key that, I want every professional, every entrepreneur actually listening to us today is to remember that project management opens, massive doors. You want to be your own CEO, you want to be your own boss, or you want to climb up that corporate ladder and, become the boss. All of the skills that Elle has actually, spoken about today is one that can set you apart. We need to be ready to do the work. We spoke about, value, strategic mindset. We talk about building relationships. Everything centers back on creating value and being the problem solver overall. My goodness, where can people actually find you? First of all, I need to highlight this. For everyone actually watching, you need to go pick up this book. As soon as I grabbed it from my door, as soon as it was delivered, I started reading it. These great leaders have put together what we call the Center of Excellence around project management. Every leader and every business professional has to get this. It's called Project Management Next Generation. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight into this one before we go?
Yeah, the beauty of this, it's yes, yeah, I'm one of the three authors. I'm with Dr. Kersner and Ricardo Vargas. All three of us bring very different things. The beauty of this is the richness of the examples and the learning we personally as authors have had from the number of companies contributed to the book. It's all about how to create organizational excellence, whatever the level of organization that you're in, right? So it's not just project management. It is really how to tie that to your success. So you see some of them on the cover. There is so many others that did not make it to the cover, but actually are cases in the book. So it's the practical aspects of this book that I love the most. But it's the learning as well. Think of writing a book as a massive program that has its pieces. So the learning is immense, and I encourage every one of us who have stories to share to do the same.
Goodness. Thank you so much. For everyone who has actually listened to us today, I want to say thank you so much for being here. And above all, I want to say thank you to Dr. L. He left everything I've had to like chase him on the phone, emails and everything, like multiple projects. He was doing stuff for the Global Project Management Conference week, 2 days ago. And he made time to be here. We want to say thank you so much. I want to thank our sponsor, Strategic Project Leader Inc., for actually making this happen as well. This wouldn't have been possible because of all of you guys who have actually contributed and actually supported. But above all, I want to make sure that you are all taking this and taking steps to be intentional to make things happen positively in your projects. So in the comments, you have an opportunity to share something, and then you are going to be highlighted probably on the next episode as to what would you be doing differently? What exactly are you going to start changing on your project and in your personal life that that will make the change and make it a valuable asset as well? Dr. L, thank you so much. And with this, I know you need to come back because we need to dive into some of the other details, because when I see how much you've grown and how far you've actually achieved, there's so much things, I know you want to share, but because of time, we want to be respectful of time as well. And we want to ensure that everyone else, has the time to take the Saturday to the next level. But I want to say thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Such an honor, such a pleasure. And I'm really grateful for your audience as well to be here with us today.
No. It's definitely been fun. And just for everyone to always remember that what you are your life's project manager. Every single action you take and your inaction pretty much represents the result you want to see in life. So be intentional about how you manage your projects. Be intentional about every single step you take, especially going forward from today. Once again, I'm your host, Fola Alabi, and I cannot wait to see you same time, next week on the Strategic Project Leader podcast. Have yourself a fantastic day and see you next week. Bye bye for now.